Some people think being an empath means being nice, but real empaths know the truth. It's not softness, it's overload. It's walking into a room and instantly feeling tension nobody admitted was there. It's smiling while your nervous system is screaming. It's understanding people so deeply that sometimes it becomes a curse. And if you've lived this your whole life, then these 7 weird things are about to hit harder than anything you've ever heard. You don't just notice energy, you absorb it, you become it. And most people around you will never understand why you disappear. Why do you overthink? Why do you suddenly go cold? Or why your silence feels heavier than someone else's anger? Because genuine empaths don't react like normal people. They survive differently. The first weird thing genuine empaths do is disappear without warning. Not because they hate people, not because they're dramatic, because their nervous system reaches a breaking point nobody else can see. A real empath can spend 1 hour around fake smiles, hidden jealousy, passive aggression, emotional manipulation, and feel exhausted for days. And the strange part is they usually won't even explain it. They'll just vanish. No argument, no speech, no closure. One day they're fully present, the next day they're emotionally gone. Because empaths don't leave when they stop loving you. They leave when being around you starts destroying their inner peace. That's why genuine empaths often isolate themselves, not to escape people, but to recover from them. And deep down, every empath listening to this knows exactly what I mean. You've walked into places that looked happy but felt toxic. You've smiled at people while your intuition whispered, "Something is wrong here." And the scary part? Your intuition was usually right. Most people think exhaustion comes from working too hard. But genuine empaths know a different kind of exhaustion. The kind that hits after sitting beside the wrong person for 10 minutes. The wind that appears after walking into a room full of fake smiles and hidden resentment. The kind that makes your soul feel heavier than your body. Because empaths don't just hear emotions. They absorb them. They carry them. They become infected by energies nobody else even notices. This is why genuine empaths disappear without warning. Not because they are selfish, not because they are dramatic, but because their nervous system reaches overload in silence. And nobody sees it happening. The empath is still smiling, still nodding, still being polite, while internally their mind is screaming for escape. You have to understand something most people will never understand about empaths. Their body reacts to emotional environments the same way normal people react to physical danger. A fake conversation feels like poison. Passive aggression feels like pressure on the chest. Manipulation feels like suffocation. Negative energy doesn't just annoy them, it enters them. That's why genuine empath. We can become exhausted after social events that everyone else enjoyed. Everyone else goes home energized. The empath goes home emotionally numb. They sit in silence trying to recover from feelings that were never theirs to begin with. And the worst part is they often blame themselves for it. They think they are too sensitive, too emotional, too affected by little things. But what they're actually experiencing is emotional overstimulation at a level most people cannot even comprehend. Empaths notice everything: the fake compliment, the forced laugh, the jealousy hidden behind support, the anger disguised as humor, the tension nobody talks about. And because they absorb emotional undercurrents automatically, their body carries stress that other people never consciously register. This is why crowded places drain genuine empaths faster than loneliness ever could, because crowds are not just people to an empath. Crowds are emotional storms, hundreds of moods, hundreds of insecurities, hundreds of hidden frustrations colliding into one space. And while everyone else simply exists in that environment, the empath feels every emotional frequency at once. That's why they sometimes disappear for days after being social. Not because they hate people, but because solitude becomes survival, silence becomes medicine, isolation becomes recovery. And people misunderstand this constantly. They accuse empaths of becoming distant, cold, antisocial. But what they don't understand is this: a genuine empath isolates for the same reason a wounded person stops running: to heal. Because being around emotionally draining people feels like carrying invisible weight all day long. The empath listens to everyone's problems, feels everyone's pain, absorbs everyone's chaos. while secretly fighting battles nobody notices inside their own mind. And the frightening part is how early this usually begins. Many empaths learned in childhood to monitor emotional energy for survival. They became experts at reading tone, facial expressions, silence, and tension because their nervous system adapted to unpredictable emotional environments. Before they even understood psychology, they understood moods. Before they understood manipulation, they felt danger. Before they understood trauma, their body was already reacting to it. This is why genuine empaths can walk into a room and instantly sense when something feels wrong, even if nobody says a word, even if everyone is smiling. Because empaths don't rely on appearances. They rely on emotional instinct, and emotional instinct rarely lies. That's also why toxic people are strangely attracted to empaths. Because manipulators recognize emotional availability immediately. They recognize compassion, patience, understanding, and they feed from it. The empath becomes the unpaid therapist, the emotional caretaker, the person everyone unloads their pain onto. And because empaths naturally understand suffering, they keep listening longer than they keep forgiving longer than they should. They keep carrying emotional burdens that were never theirs to carry, until eventually their soul becomes tired, not dramatic tired, existentially tired, the kind of tired sleep cannot fix, the kind of tired caused by years of emotional overload. And this is when genuine empaths start disappearing from the world, not physically at first. Emotionally, they stop answering messages quickly, stop explaining themselves, stop attending everything, stop forcing conversations that drain them. Because eventually the empath realizes something life-changing. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It is survival. This is why some of the kindest people suddenly become unreachable. Because kindness without boundaries destroys the empath first. And after enough emotional exhaustion, the empath begins choosing peace over attachment, silence over chaos, distance over fake connection. You'll notice something terrifying when an empath final. Why reaches this point? Their absence becomes louder than their presence ever was. Because the people around them suddenly realize how much emotional stability the empath carried for everyone else. The empath was the calming energy, the listener, the emotional absorber, the one silently holding the room together. And once they disappear, people feel the difference immediately. The warmth is gone. The patience is gone. The emotional safety is gone. Because genuine empaths give pieces of their nervous system to the people they love. That's why betrayal hits them differently. That's why fake people exhaust them differently. That's why emotional chaos damages them differently. And the saddest part is most empaths spend years trying to become less sensitive instead of realizing their sensitivity was never the weakness. The weakness was allowing emotionally unhealthy people unlimited access to their spirit. A real empath eventually learns a brutal truth. Not everyone deserves access to you. Our energy. Not everyone deserves your understanding. Not everyone deserves your emotional presence. Because some people only know how to take. Some people only know how to consume light they never learned to create themselves. And empaths, by nature, shine so brightly that broken people mistake them for endless sources of healing. But even the deepest soul gets exhausted when it keeps pouring into people who never pour back. That is why genuine empaths disappear. Not to punish people, not to seek attention, but because somewhere deep inside, their spirit realizes if they stay in the wrong energy too long, they will lose themselves completely. Genuine empaths live with a gift that often feels more like a burden. They see things nobody says out loud. They feel things nobody admits. And they notice emotional shifts so subtle that most people walk past them without ever realizing they existed. This is why empaths often feel different from everyone around them. Because while most people listen to words, empaths listen to energy, and energy never lies for long. A person can smile in front of an empath while secretly feeling resentment. They can speak kindly while hiding envy underneath their tone. They can pretend to care while emotionally pulling away. And even if the empath cannot explain it logically in that moment, their body feels it instantly. That feeling is what confuses them for years. Because they grow up sensing hidden tension nobody else acknowledges. They notice discomfort in silence, sadness behind fake laughter, manipulation behind charm. And when they try to explain these feelings, people often dismiss them. You're overthinking. You're imagining things. You're too sensitive. But then something keeps happening over and over again. The empath turns out to be right. The person who felt off eventually reveals their true intentions. The relationship that felt emotionally unsafe eventually becomes toxic. The fake friend eventually betrays everyone. The charming manipulator eventually exposes the darkness hidden behind the performance. And after enough experiences like this, the empath stops ignoring their intuition, because they realize their nervous system notices danger long before logic catches up. This is why genuine empaths become human lie detectors. Not because they are suspicious people, but because emotional pain trained them to study inconsistency. Their survival depended on reading moods accurately. Their safety depended on sensing emotional shifts before conflict even happened. Many empaths learned this skill in childhood without realizing it. They became hyper-aware of tone changes, facial expressions, silence, energy in a room, because somewhere in their past, reading emotional environments became necessary. And once your nervous system learns to scan for emotional truth, it never fully stops. That's why empaths can feel emotionally exhausted after one conversation with a fake person, because their intuition number entices the contradiction between what someone says and what someone truly feels. And holding those contradictions inside the body creates tension. Imagine sitting across from someone whose words say, "I support you," but whose energy screams competition. Imagine hearing "I'm happy for you" while feeling jealousy radiating underneath the sentence. Most people miss those details completely, but empaths absorb them instantly. This is why small interactions affect them so deeply, because empaths are not reacting to surface behavior. They are reacting to emotional truth hidden underneath it. And emotional truth has weight. That's why genuine empaths often feel uncomfortable around people everyone else admires. They can sense emotional danger beneath charisma. They notice insecurity hidden behind confidence, cruelty hidden behind humor, control hidden behind kindness. Meanwhile, everyone else gets hypnotized by appearances. The empath gets disturbed by energy. And this creates one of the loneliest experiences an empath can go through. Watching people trust someone your intuition is warning you about. Because empaths often see the darkness in people long before the mask slips. They feel emotional coldness hiding beneath charm. They notice when attention feels performative instead of sincere. And the frightening part is, they usually sense these things immediately. But here's where genuine empaths suffer the most. They doubt themselves. They ignore their instincts to avoid sounding paranoid. They give people more chances because they want to believe the best in them. They silence their inner alarm system because everyone else seems comfortable. And every time they betray their intuition, they pay for it emotionally later. Because intuition is not random for empaths. It is accumulated emotional intelligence. It is pattern recognition sharpened through pain, observation, betrayal, and survival. That's why an empath can notice things in seconds that take other people ears to understand. They notice when someone's eyes lose warmth, when affection becomes obligation, when interest becomes manipulation, when silence becomes emotional punishment. And because they absorb emotional atmospheres so intensely, they can physically feel tension before conflict even begins. Their chest tightens, their stomach sinks, their nervous system starts warning them something is wrong. Most people call this anxiety, but many times it's intuition detecting emotional danger. This is also why empaths struggle in fake environments. Workplaces built on politics, friend groups built on gossip, relationships built on emotional games. Because genuine empaths crave emotional honesty more than perfection. They can handle painful truth. What destroys them is emotional deception. A fake smile drains them faster than open anger. A manipulative compliment unsettles them more than direct criticism. Because empaths can survive conflict. What they cannot survive is emotional confidence. Cohesion created by people hiding their true intentions, and this is why many empaths eventually become highly selective about who they allow close to them. Not because they hate people, because they finally understand proximity affects energy. The wrong person can disturb an empath's peace without saying a single cruel word. The wrong relationship can emotionally suffocate them while looking healthy from the outside. The wrong friendship can quietly drain their spirit for years before they fully realize it. And once empaths finally learn to trust themselves, something changes permanently. They stop needing proof for every feeling. They stop ignoring discomfort to keep others comfortable. They stop forcing connections their spirit rejects. Because they realize intuition is not weakness, it is protection. And the scary part about genuine empaths is once they fully trust their instincts, manipulation stops working on them for long. The mask always slips eventually. The energy always. Exposes itself eventually. The hidden resentment always leaks eventually. Because no matter how convincing someone's words sound, genuine empaths eventually feel the truth hiding underneath them. That is why people fear emotionally aware individuals. Not because empaths are loud, not because they are aggressive, but because they see what others desperately try to hide. And nothing terrifies a manipulative person more than someone who can feel the truth without needing evidence. One of the most painful things about being a genuine empath is this: they feel guilty for protecting themselves. Read that again. The very people who give the most love often feel the most shame for finally saying enough, because empaths are not naturally built to reject people. They are built to understand them. And that becomes the beginning of their suffering. A genuine empath can look at someone toxic and still see the wounded child inside them. They can see pain hiding beneath anger, fear hiding back, under control, loneliness hiding beneath manipulation. And because they understand emotional pain so deeply, they keep making excuses for behavior that slowly destroys them. This is why empaths stay too long in places that drain their soul, too long in one-sided friendships, too long in emotionally abusive relationships, too long around people who only call when they need healing, attention, validation, or rescue. Because empaths convince themselves that understanding someone means they should continue tolerating them. But understanding pain and accepting disrespect are not the same thing. And most empaths learn this lesson far too late. The tragedy is that empaths rarely abandon people quickly. In fact, they usually abandon themselves first. They silence their discomfort to avoid hurting others. They ignore red flags to preserve connection. They suppress intuition because they want peace more than confrontation. And slowly, piece by piece, they begin betraying their own nervous system. That is why so many empaths feel emotionally exhausted without understanding why. Because every time they say yes when their spirit is screaming no, their soul absorbs the damage. And here's the terrifying part. Most people around them never notice. The empath still shows up, still listens, still supports, still gives love with shaking hands and a tired heart, while secretly feeling themselves disappear internally. Because empaths were taught that being good means being endlessly available, endlessly patient, endlessly forgiving. But endless forgiveness without boundaries becomes self-destruction. A genuine empath knows what it feels like to stay awake replaying conversations, wondering if they were too harsh simply because they expressed a need. They know what it feels like to apologize for setting boundaries that should have existed years ago. They know what it feels like to feel guilty for choosing peace over emotional chaos. And manipulative people sense this immediately. They recognize the empath's compassion. They recognize the guilt. They recognize how deeply the empath fears hurting others. And they use it. They weaponize sadness, weaponize silence, weaponize victimhood, weaponize emotional dependency. Because toxic people know something powerful. If you can make an empath feel guilty, you can control them. That's why empaths often become trapped in cycles of emotional exhaustion. They keep trying to fix relationships that are slowly breaking them. They keep pouring love into people who only know how to consume it. They keep giving chances to people who mistake kindness for weakness. And every single time they ignore their own pain to save someone else, something inside them fractures a little more. Until one day the empath wakes up emotionally numb. Not because they stopped caring, because they cared too much for too long without receiving emotional safety in return. This is the moment that changes everything for a genuine empath. The moment they realize compassion without self-respect becomes self-abandonment. And when that realization finally hits, it shakes their entire identity. Because empaths built their lives around being needed, being supportive, being emotionally available. So when they finally begin setting boundaries, it feels unnatural at first. painful even. They feel selfish for taking space, cold for saying no, cruel for protecting their peace. Meanwhile, the people who benefited from their lack of boundaries suddenly become angry. Not because the empath changed into a bad person, but because the empath stopped being easy to drain. And this is where the empath begins seeing people clearly for the first time. Because boundaries reveal true intentions faster than words ever will. The people who genuinely love you will respect your limits. The people who were using you will resent them. That realization destroys illusions instantly. Suddenly, the empath notices who only called during crises, who only cared when they needed emotional support, who disappeared when the empath stopped overgiving. And that pain cuts deeply because empaths rarely love halfway. When they care with their entire nervous system, with loyalty, with patience, with emotional presence so deep it feels healing to others. But eventually they realize something heartbreaking. Not everyone loves the way they do. Some people only love convenience. Some people only love access. Some people only love what you provide emotionally. And once an empath fully sees this truth, they begin changing in ways that shock everyone around them. The overly available person becomes selective. The chronic rescuer becomes distant. The one who tolerated everything suddenly walks away quietly. Not out of hatred, out of survival. Because after years of emotional burnout, the empath finally understands a brutal truth. You cannot heal in environments where you constantly betray yourself to keep others comfortable. That's why genuine empaths eventually become terrifyingly protective of their peace. Not because they became heartless, but because life taught them what happens when they give unlimited access to people who never earned it. And when an empath reaches this stage, something powerful happens internally. They stop explaining their boundaries to people committed to misunderstanding them. They stop chasing emotional reciprocity from emotionally unavailable people. They stop shrinking themselves to fit inside toxic relationships. Because exhaustion finally taught them what empathy alone never could. You can love someone deeply and still need to leave them. You can understand someone's trauma and still refuse to tolerate their behavior. You can have compassion for broken people without allowing them to break you too. And the most dangerous thing about a healed empath is this. Once they finally learn their worth, they never again confuse self-sacrifice with love.